You ever wonder what happens when the drama starts costing more than the show? Unrivaled just quietly pulled the plug on Angel Reese's return, and the signs were there all along. Her endless technicals, the turnovers, the me-bounds, and that playoff no-show. The league that gave her a spotlight just decided the chaos wasn't worth the clicks. The same Angel Reese who once bragged about bringing energy to every team. That spark just burned her bridge. Multiple sources say Unrivaled didn't forget who left them hanging during the playoffs. This isn't a negotiation delay. It's a quiet breakup dressed as a roster update. Let's unpack how Reese went from face of the Unrivaled to fired from the league. Do you think Unrivaled made the right decision to fire Reese? Let us know down in the comments below. When Unrivaled dropped its second season roster, the silence around Angel Reese spoke louder than any press release. Her name, once front and center on every poster, was gone. No injury report, no statement, just absence. People online started asking if this was an oversight or a message, and honestly, given her track record, it's hard to argue it wasn't both. The player who proudly called herself the first ever Unrivaled champion had somehow disappeared from the very league she helped launch. The league that once promoted her as the face of competition apparently decided it didn't want to see that face again. Reese came into Unrivaled's first season like she had something to prove. She talked about changing the game and bringing swagger to women's basketball. Early on she had moments, big stat lines, crowd energy, and plenty of interviews where she branded herself as unstoppable. But that confidence quickly looked like static. Behind the flashy numbers was a pattern, turnovers piling up, constant technical fouls, and body language that screamed she was playing for cameras more than teammates. Teammates reportedly noticed that too, and not in a good way. They saw her podcasting and curating her social feed mid-season, even as the playoff race tightened. It became easy to wonder whether her head was in the game or still in the comment section. I had no idea that Angel Reese didn't even bother to did not show up to support her teammates. It was that unimportant, but yet took a victory lap that you won a championship? You got to be joking. Angel Reese beating her shit, which I will say now that I have this Unrivaled championship that I didn't even think to attend. When the Unrivaled playoffs arrived, she didn't. Reese sat out those final games, and fans saw her celebrating through a phone screen instead of on the floor. Her team carried on without her, while she cheered from a FaceTime window like a distant relative. For a player who called herself a champion, the timing couldn't have been worse. From the outside, it looked less like a break, and more like bailing when things got hard. That decision built a reputation that's followed her into every locker room since. Unreliable when it matters the most. And the frustration wasn't limited to Unrivaled. Over in the WNBA, the Chicago Sky saw the same pattern take shape. Her rookie season ended early with a wrist injury and followed suit by a sophomore season that ended with a bad back. However, a few weeks later, Reese made plenty of social appearances and brand deals that didn't seem to require much recovery time. And this championship game was so unimportant, she's like, nah, I'm good. I'll watch from home, I'll watch this stream from home, and I'll FaceTime in if we win. This league has gotta figure out a way to honor Angel Reese and all this. That's right. The tension inside the Sky reportedly grew when those injuries coincidentally resolved once the spotlight shifted elsewhere. Coaches were said to question her focus, with teammates left guessing whether she'd show up ready to compete or leave mid-campaign again. Patterns like that stick. In pro sports, talent only covers so much, especially when it looks like someone's dedication expires as soon as accountability shows up. Reese's exits started to look like habits, and by her sophomore year, that reputation overshadowed any box score. Even Unrivaled, built on personality as much as play, started to realize the personality was more trouble than it was worth. Inside league circles, whispers grew louder. No public drama, but quiet decisions being made. Unrivaled wanted to establish stability heading into season 2. And one unreliable star doesn't fit into that kind of vision. Reports say executives noticed that when her name trended, it wasn't for her play, but for something messy off the court. The optics had turned sour. Sponsors hesitated, players rolled their eyes, and the league's image got tied to unnecessary drama. Eventually, the simplest fix became the most brutal one. Leave her out. The decision to exclude her didn't need a formal announcement, just skip her name on the roster and let everyone else do the talking. If fans wanted closure, they weren't going to get it from Unrivaled. The message was simple. This time, they weren't waiting for Reese to walk out. They quietly locked the door behind her. The same athlete who once framed herself as the league's pioneer suddenly looked like its cautionary tale. After all, how can you lead a team when your reputation is built on leaving them behind? The firing signals more than personal fallout. It shows a shift in women's basketball culture, where stars are finally being held to the same accountability they tweet about. The league noticed that charisma without commitment wears thin fast, and performance speaks louder than followers. Other players are stepping up with professionalism and consistency, reshaping what leadership looks like in modern women's hoops. And Unrivaled, by drawing this line, has made it clear that no amount of noise can drown out the new standard. Unrivaled originally treated Angel Reese like its crown jewel. Every promo leaned on her name, every clip centered around her reactions, and every highlight package made sure her face popped up first. The league flooded social media with her content, racking up more than 31 million views across platforms. It was hard to scroll without seeing Reese hyping herself as the sport's new powerhouse. The buzz worked for a few days. She was trending, the league was winning, and everyone seemed convinced that drama equaled growth. Then the numbers collapsed. After that first weekend, TV audiences dropped to around 100,000 per game, cutting 2/3 of the viewers. The memes stayed, the real fans didn't. You could scroll through endless clips of her trash-talking or high-stepping after missed shots, but the same people flooding comment sections weren't showing up to watch full games. The league's analytics team saw it plain as day. Virality without loyalty. It turned out that a storm of clicks doesn't fill seats or charm sponsors into writing checks. The internal conversations changed tone fast. League executives who once touted Reese as Unrivaled's front-facing star started asking the obvious question: does this attention make us money, or just noise? Sponsors weren't blind to the pattern. Each outburst and public feud made it harder for Unrivaled to convince partners that women's basketball could anchor a clean, positive brand. The headlines stopped being about competition and turned into weekly updates on who Reese called out next. Her villain arc became predictable, then annoying. For companies selling empowerment, not chaos, that's a bad bet. Behind-the-scenes reports say Unrivaled's marketing department saw the return on investment chart slide into dangerous territory. Sure, her name could spark millions of views in a weekend, but ticket sales stayed flat. That's when the term diminishing returns started floating around. Reese's drama had hit the point where more controversy didn't equal more engagement. It drove audiences away. Once viewers realized every week ended with more finger-pointing than basketball, they tuned out entirely. The same effect hit her WNBA narrative too. One day she's complaining about pay. The next day, missing layups. Fans get tired of the mismatch between talk and results. So, when Reese's name disappeared from the Season 2 roster, insiders called it strategic silence. Publicly, the league didn't need to release a statement or justify anything. Privately, they wanted to reset the tone. Less gossip, more gameplay. The silent treatment served two purposes. It cooled off the drama narrative and signaled a new direction for the brand. Leaving her out quietly sent a louder message than any headline. Accountability matters more than attitude. Investors reportedly appreciated that move, noting that stability drives credibility. You could almost hear the collective exhale from sponsors, tired of defending her antics. From a business standpoint, keeping Reese around meant paying for unpredictability. She might draw views, but at what cost? League officials didn't want to gamble on another season where a player might quit before the playoffs and overshadow the product they're trying to build. Her absence was the easiest financial decision of the year. Instead of throwing good money after bad publicity, Unrivaled turned the page. All that talk about being the face of the league now looks like one expensive experiment in influencer overreach. The irony is that Reese's strategy, leaning on persona and provocation, once looked like the future of sports marketing. But audiences aren't craving conflict, they're craving connection to real competition. Drama temporarily entertains, but it doesn't win commitment. Reese proved there's a hard ceiling on controversy's value once the substance disappears. The fans figured it out before the league did. The second Unrivaled realized the attention surrounding her wasn't translating into paying customers, her future was sealed. The game has moved past personality wars, now people want proof of progress. And wouldn't you know, it's players like Caitlin Clark and the Fever who are giving fans exactly that. Unrivaled cutting ties with Angel Reese quietly marks something bigger than just one player's exit. It signaled a victory for a very different kind of basketball philosophy. And you don't have to look far to find its face. Caitlin Clark has become the model for how to lead without chaos, how to grow a team by lifting everyone around you instead of chasing headlines. The contrast is too sharp to ignore. While Reese seemed busy curating her persona, Clark built one around consistency, results, and patience. The more Reese clashed with teammates and critics, the more Clark empowered hers. The league's message couldn't be clearer. The future belongs to players who treat focus as part of their brand. Clark's Indiana Fever aren't just improving, they're evolving into the kind of cohesive group women's basketball has been waiting for. In 2024 and 2025, their chemistry became the talking point of every game. Aaliyah Boston plays with a freer rhythm because Clark's spacing drags defenders out of the paint. Lexi Hull is suddenly finding her stroke again, thanks to those perfectly timed passes to the corner. Kelsey Mitchell keeps her scoring rhythm because Clark doesn't dominate the ball. She creates flow. And then there's Sophie Cunningham, who slid into the lineup bringing toughness that Clark amplifies rather than overshadows. None of this requires shouting or arm-waving on national TV. It's quiet leadership that works through trust, timing, and repetition. Coaches rave about Clark's adaptability. They point out how smoothly she reads game situations and how rarely she forces her own highlights. Unlike the kind of play that puts individual stats above structure, Clark has turned unselfish decision-making into her signature move. People call it the Clark effect, because everyone around her gets better. The scoring spreads, the spacing sharpens, and the locker room stays steady. You can see it on players' faces. They're engaged, buying into something lasting. That kind of stability doesn't trend online the same way a feud does, but it always wins long-term, and the results are visible far beyond the court. The Fever's attendance has jumped to record levels, merchandise sales are rising, and media outlets are fighting for broadcast rights. In just 2 seasons, Clark managed to build what most franchises spend a decade chasing: identity and trust. Sponsors who once hesitated to invest in women's hoops are now calling the Fever first. They see reliability, professionalism, and a product families actually want to support. That's what the league needs to sustain growth. Meanwhile, Reese's old teams are sorting through drama, half-empty arenas, and exhausted PR departments. The numbers don't lie. Fans gravitate to authenticity and effort, not attitude. Redemption in women's basketball isn't about a flashy comeback story anymore. It's about consistent commitment. Clark represents a new kind of redemption, one built on discipline and composure. Her calm under pressure is redefining star power. When things get tense in the fourth quarter, she doesn't point fingers, she calls plays that bring everyone together. That's the kind of leadership that multiplies wins, and it's why the Fever look like the blueprint for the next era of the game. Compare that with Chicago, where every offseason seems to start with rebuilding phrases like new identity or a fresh start. Those phrases are just codes for instability, which has followed Reese everywhere she's gone. Every league eventually reaches a moment when it decides what kind of stars it wants leading the way. For women's basketball, that moment arrived the minute Unrivaled left Reese off the roster and doubled down on players whose brands don't need micromanaging. The balance of power has shifted firmly toward players who treat the court like a workplace and their teammates like partners, not props. Clark embodies that professionalism without ever preaching about it. You can read it in the way her teammates celebrate small successes, or how she deflects praise in post-game interviews. As women's basketball steps into the mainstream, those two archetypes, Reese's volatility and Clark's stability, are rewriting what defines a star. Leagues are no longer chasing noise. They're chasing leaders who deliver trust. That's why executives, fans, and sponsors alike are lining up behind the Clark model. It doesn't just win games. It builds something sustainable. And now, as Indiana fine-tunes for the stretch run, it feels like the rest of the sport is finally catching up to that reality, one perfectly timed assist at a time. Unrivaled cutting. Reese loose feels like the moment women's basketball finally chose performance over noise. Fans have seen enough drama disguised as confidence. They're showing up now for players who actually build teams. That shift makes sense. Loyalty follows effort, not volume. The Fever prove it daily, showing how shared growth draws real attention. While Reese's exits left headlines, Clark's leadership keeps creating moments teams can build on. As the Fever head into the off-season, leagues everywhere seem to understand the new equation. Drama trends briefly, but discipline, chemistry, and steady leadership turn attention into something permanent, winning cultures. Do you think Unrivaled made the right decision to fire Reese? Let us know down in the comments below.